My husband told me to step out of his birthday photo loud enough so everyone around us could hear. And in that second, I understood something plain and harsh. I was standing inside my own marriage, but I was not seen as family. I remember the exact tone his voice had. It was not angry, not embarrassed, just casual, like he was asking someone to move their car from a driveway. Hey, can you step out for a minute? Just family. For half a second, I thought maybe I heard him wrong. I was already smiling, turned slightly toward the camera, my hand still resting lightly on his arm. The room smelled like garlic and fresh baked bread, and someone behind us was laughing too loud. A phone was lifted in the air. Everyone was waiting. I looked at Mark, my husband of 7 years, and waited for him to glance back at me and realize what he had just said. He didn't. He was already looking past me, adjusting the frame of the picture. His ex-wife, Denise, was standing on his other side, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. His daughter, Kayla, was there too, 16 and uncomfortable, staring down at her shoes like she wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Mark's sister, Laura, waved from the edge of the group, trying to fit everyone into the shot. I felt the heat crawl up my neck and settle across my cheeks. My wedding ring suddenly felt tight, like it no longer belonged on my hand. "Oh," I said. "I don't even remember deciding to speak." "Okay." I stepped back once, then again. Someone moved quickly to fill the empty space where I had been standing, like water closing over a dropped stone. The camera clicked. I turned and walked out of the banquet room before anyone could say my name. That was the peak of it, whether Mark realized it or not. Everything else happened after that moment. The restaurant was Maggiano's Little Italy, a place we had gone to many times over the years, usually for birthdays or anniversaries. Safe, familiar, simple Italian food that everyone could agree on without arguing. The kind of restaurant where the servers wore black vests and called you folks. It was Mark's 52nd birthday, Wednesday evening, 7:18 p.m., according to the clock hanging above the hostess stand that I stared at while I waited for my eyes to stop stinging. I could still hear the celebration behind me, forks, scraping plates, sudden bursts of laughter. The low hum of conversations layered over each other, life continuing without pause. I walked past an older couple who were waiting to be seated. The woman looked at me, then quickly looked away the way people do when they sense something is wrong but do not want to step into it. My heels made sharp sounds against the tile floor. My hands were shaking as I pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped into the parking lot. The air outside was cool, early fall. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in, trying to slow the racing in my chest. The smell of marinara sauce clung to my clothes and hair. I pressed the key fob and heard my car unlock somewhere to my left. I got inside, closed the door, and just sat there. My purse was still on my lap, where I had grabbed it without thinking. My phone buzzed once. I did not look at it. I thought about going back in. That is the part I am not proud of, but it is true. I told myself I could laugh it off, that I could slip back into my chair and let it become one of those moments you smooth over later, the way I always did. I could tell myself he did not mean it like that. I could tell myself I was being too sensitive. I imagined walking back inside, smiling too wide, pretending nothing had happened while the cake was brought out. Everyone would relax. Mark would give me that thankful look he gave me whenever I fixed something messy for him. Instead, I started the engine and drove home. The house was quiet when I arrived. Our house, the one in a calm subdivision off Route 59 with the maple tree in the front yard and the step on the back porch that always creaked. I slipped off my shoes by the door and stood in the kitchen, listening to the low hum of the refrigerator. I did not cry right away. I washed my hands. I wiped down the counter, even though it was already clean. I changed into sweatpants and an old t-shirt. I kept myself busy until there was nothing left to straighten or scrub. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Laura. "He's been drinking non-stop since you left." I stared at the words. They felt unreal, like they belonged to another night, another version of my life. I typed a reply, erased it, typed again. Then I locked the phone and placed it face down on the table. I did not answer. That night, I lay in bed staring up at the ceiling, listening to the clock on the dresser tick away each second. Mark did not come home until after midnight. I heard the garage door open and shut. His steps were uneven on the stairs. He did not come into the bedroom. He slept on the couch downstairs. In the morning, the house smelled faintly of coffee and something sour. I stood in the kitchen wearing my robe, staring at the empty chair where he usually sat, and tried to find the right words for what I was feeling. It was not just pain. It was not even anger yet. It was the understanding that this had not appeared from nowhere. There had been signs, small things I had ignored over the years. Invitations that included Denise, because it was easier for Kayla. Christmas cards addressed to Mark and family. Family pictures where I was always the one holding the camera. I had told myself I was being mature, calm, flexible. But standing in that restaurant, being asked to step out like an extra who wandered into the wrong scene, something inside me finally stopped bending. At 6:05 a.m., the coffee maker finished with a loud gurgling sound. The local news played softly. Talking about traffic on Interstate 88, I wrapped my hands around my mug and let the heat sink into my palms. I did not yet know what I was going to do. I was not thinking about revenge. I was not even thinking about leaving. I was only thinking about that empty space in the photo and how quickly someone else had stepped into it. For years, I had made myself smaller so everyone else could fit comfortably. And for the first time, I wondered what might happen if I refused to shrink. The next morning, the word that kept circling in my head was one everyone loved to use for me: understanding. I had heard it so often that it no longer felt like a compliment. Laura said it. Denise said it, smiling sweetly as if she were praising me. Even Mark said it, usually right after he had asked me to swallow something painful. "You're so understanding," he would say, and I would nod because nodding was easier than explaining why my chest felt tight and heavy. I stood in the kitchen at 6:05 a.m., the sky still gray beyond the window, listening to the coffee machine hiss and sputter. The radio was tuned to the local AM station Mark preferred, the one that talked about traffic delays and high school football scores. A voice mentioned an accident near Aurora. I stirred cream into my coffee and watched it swirl slowly. Understanding had become a leash. I just had not noticed the moment it slipped around my neck. Mark came downstairs around 7, moving carefully as if the house might react badly if he stepped wrong. He looked worn out. His eyes were red, his hair still damp from the shower. He did not look at me right away. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I answered. He opened the refrigerator, stared into it for a few seconds, then closed it again without taking anything out. I got a little carried away last night. I waited. Waiting was another skill I had learned during our marriage. I had become very good at it. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," he said finally. "You know that, right?" I took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. "What did you mean, Mark?" I asked quietly. He let out a long breath and rubbed the back of his neck. "It was just a family photo. Denise was there for Kayla. It wasn't a big thing. There it was. The minimizing. The quiet erasing. I felt the familiar urge rise in me, the one that pushed me to calm everything down, to reassure him, to make it easier for both of us to move forward. My mouth even opened to say it was fine. Then I closed it. I need to get ready for work, I said instead. He looked surprised, like I had skipped a line in a script we both knew by heart. Okay, he said slowly. I left the kitchen before he could add anything else. At work, I could not focus. I am an office manager for a small construction company in town. Nothing exciting. Phones, invoices, schedules, paperwork, the kind of job where people assume everything runs on its own. By mid-morning, Sharon from accounting leaned over the wall of my cubicle. You okay? She asked. Sharon was 62, sharp and direct, with short gray hair and a habit of speaking the truth without dressing it up. I'm fine, I replied automatically. She raised one eyebrow. You want to try that again? I let out a short, humorless laugh. My husband asked me to step out of his birthday photo last night. Said it was just family. Sharon did not gasp. She did not shake her head. She simply nodded once. That'll do it? That'll do what? I asked. Make you tired, she said. The real kind of tired. Then she went back to her desk. Somehow that simple response made me feel understood in a way all the empty comfort in the world could not. All day, memories floated up without warning. The Christmas cards. Every December, I picked him out at Target, standing in the aisle too long, trying to choose something that felt warm but not too flashy. I addressed each envelope by hand. Mark and family. Not Mark and me. Not even our last name together. Just Mark and family. I used to tell myself it did not matter. I told myself names were small things. Now I was not so sure. I sat at my desk staring at the computer screen, thinking about that photo from the night before. I pictured it clearly. Mark in the center, Denise close beside him, Kayla between them, Laura leaning in from the side. Everyone smiling, everyone fitting neatly together. And the empty space where I had stood for 7 years. For the first time, I did not want to step back into that space. I wanted to know what it would feel like to let it stay empty. Asterisk, the thick cardstock, with the snowflakes pressed into the front, felt expansive and serious in my hands. I wrote every single address by hand, carefully, slowly, making sure the letters looked neat. I signed each card Mark and Sarah. When the thank you texts came back, they were always written to Mark. Never to both of us. Just Mark. One time his aunt even replied, "So nice of Denise to think of us." I stared at that message longer than I should have. I remembered the neighborhood barbecue last summer when someone casually asked how long Mark and Denise had been divorced. And he answered the question while I was standing right there beside him holding a tray of burgers. No one corrected themselves. Not one person. And he didn't correct them either. I remembered standing behind the camera at Kayla's middle school graduation, adjusting the zoom so everyone else could fit into the frame. At the time, I told myself this was what being mature looked like. This was what a second marriage demanded. Flexibility, grace, patience. By the time I drove home that evening, the word had turned sour in my mouth. Understanding. Mark wasn't home yet. I reheated leftovers and ate standing at the kitchen counter, not even bothering with a plate. The house felt unusually quiet, like it was holding its breath. After dinner, I opened the hall closet to grab the vacuum and almost tripped over a pile of papers that had slid out onto the floor. I crouched down to pick them up, already annoyed. Mark had a habit of shoving things wherever they would fit. Old mail, insurance papers, manuals for appliances we didn't even own anymore. As I stacked the pages together. I noticed a manila folder with handwriting on the tab. Mortgage deed insurance. I froze for a second. I don't know what made me sit down right there on the hallway floor and open it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe some quiet part of me had already started looking for proof that I wasn't imagining things. Inside were copies of our mortgage statements, the home insurance policy, and the deed to the house, our house. Both names were printed clearly, his and mine, side by side. I kept flipping through the papers. There were bank statements from our joint account, printed emails from years ago. One message caught my attention. "Hey babe, it started. Can you sign this real quick? It's just for the refinance." "You're better with paperwork anyway." I remembered that night. He had handed me the documents at the kitchen table when I was already half asleep, trusting me to take care of it. I had signed them without asking questions. I always had leaned back against the wall, the folder resting in my lap. For years, I had let everyone believe I was on the sidelines, that I was extra, optional, replaceable, but on paper, I was anything but. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Laura. "I hope you know Mark loves you. He's just not good with emotions." I stared at the screen for a long time, then placed the phone face down on the floor without replying. Later that night, lying in bed alone, I stared up at the ceiling and finally allowed myself to think the thought I had been avoiding all day. What if I stopped being understanding? What if I stopped translating his behavior into something easier for other people to accept? The idea frightened me more than I expected. Being the agreeable one had been my role for so long that I wasn't sure who I would be without it. But as I slowly drifted off to sleep, one thing felt clear. I wasn't invisible on paper. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered more than anyone realized. I wasn't searching for leverage. I just stumbled into it the way you stumble into truth while cleaning up someone else's mess. On Saturday morning, Mark went golfing with his brother-in-law, acting like nothing at all was wrong. I stayed home and did what I always did when my nerves felt tight. I organized drawers, files, small corners of the house. Quiet, physical work that lets your mind catch up. I emptied the hall closet completely and spread everything across the living room floor. Old instruction manuals, warranty cards, stacks of unopened mail with Mark's name printed across the front. I sorted things into neat piles: trash, recycle, keep. That's when I found the credit card statements. They weren't hidden, just shoved into an old shoebox like they would magically handle themselves. I sat cross-legged on the rug and flipped through them slowly, my stomach tightening more with each page. There were charges I recognized. Home Depot, Costco, the gas station near his office, and others I didn't recognize at all. A new set of golf clubs, a weekend hotel stay in Milwaukee, bar tabs large enough to make my eyebrows lift. I opened my laptop and logged into our bank account, then into our credit monitoring app, the one I had set up years ago when we were trying to improve our mortgage rate. My name, my email, my password. The numbers appeared on the screen, calm and neutral. My credit score was excellent. His was not. I leaned back against the couch and let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding in. It wasn't victory that I felt. It was clarity. For years, I had been the one making sure bills were paid on time. The one who caught mistakes. The one who kept our finances steady while Mark played the role of provider in public. People assumed he handled everything. He never corrected them. I did. My phone rang. "Sharon, are you busy?" she asked. "Kind of," I said. But not really. I told her what I had found. Not every detail, just enough for her to understand. She was quiet for a moment before speaking. You know what that means, right? That I'm better at spreadsheets than I thought? I tried to joke. That you've been carrying him, she said softly. Financially and otherwise. I gave a small laugh. That's not how it feels. It never does when you're the one holding the weight, she replied. That afternoon, I scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. Her office was in Downers Grove, inside a low brick building near a strip mall. The waiting room smelled lightly of lemon cleaner and old paper. I filled out forms on a clipboard with hands that wouldn't stay steady, half convinced I was overreacting. Patricia Klein, who went by Pat, was in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled into a simple bun and reading glasses resting on top of her head. She offered me tea and didn't rush me once. I told her everything. The photo, the years of understanding, the folder on the hallway floor. She listened carefully, nodding now and then, her pen moving slowly across a yellow legal pad. When I finished talking, she set her pen down and looked at me. You're not here because you want to punish him, she said. No, I answered. Quickly, I can't keep doing this. She studied my face for a moment. You've been protecting his image. Socially, financially, emotionally. I swallowed. I thought that's what being married meant. It does, she said gently. When it goes both ways. She explained my options. Separation, counseling, setting clear boundaries. None of it sounded dramatic. It sounded reasonable, practical, adult. Then she asked, do you know who he lists as his emergency contact at work? The question hit harder than I expected. I assume it's me, I said quietly. Assume, she repeated. That night, I checked. Mark's work email was still logged in on the home computer. I hesitated, feeling a flash of guilt, then reminded myself I wasn't searching for secrets. I was checking facts. I scrolled down to emergency contact, Denise. I closed the laptop slowly and sat there in the dark, the house silent around me. I wasn't family in photos. I wasn't first in line when it mattered. Something inside me shifted, not into anger, into resolve. The next week, I stopped doing things. Not in a loud way. Not all at once. Just quietly. I didn't remind him about refilling his blood pressure medication. When he realized at the pharmacy, he called me, clearly annoyed. Can you just call it in? He asked. I can't today, I replied. My voice sounded unfamiliar to my own ears.com/even. He huffed. Fine. At the church fundraiser planning meeting, I didn't bring the sign-up sheets or the dessert I had promised. When someone asked where they were, Mark looked at me. I thought you had them, he said. I didn't, I answered simply. The silence that followed felt heavy and uncomfortable. Someone cleared their throat. The meeting moved on. At home, he grew restless and sharper in his tone. He misplaced things more often. He missed a deadline at work and came home frustrated. You've been distant, he said one night. I've been busy, I answered. That wasn't a lie. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Kayla. Are you mad at my dad? She wrote. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. No, I typed back after a moment. I'm just figuring some things out. A minute later, she replied, I didn't like the picture thing. I closed my eyes and let out a slow breath. In that moment, I understood something important. I wasn't the only one who had noticed. I was just the only one who had been asked to step aside. When you stop holding everything together, it doesn't all collapse at once. It wobbles first. That surprised me the most. I had expected fireworks. arguments, some dramatic fight in the kitchen. Instead, what I saw were small failures spaced far enough apart that no one could blame bad luck anymore. Mark started losing things constantly. His phone, his keys, papers he swore he had left on the counter. He asked me where they were, the way he always had, already half irritated that I didn't know. I haven't seen them, I would say. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes it wasn't. Either way, I didn't go searching for them. On Wednesday afternoon, he called from Walgreens. "They don't have my blood pressure refill," he said. "Did you call it in?" I was sitting at my desk at work with a stack of invoices spread out in front of me. Sharon glanced over, curious about the tone of my voice. "No," I said. "I didn't." There was a pause on the other end. "Why not?" he asked. "I forgot," I replied. Again, not a lie. Just not the full story. He let out a frustrated breath. "I guess I'll handle it." And for once, he did. After I hung up the phone, my hands were trembling. I stayed there for a long minute, staring at the screen like it might light up again. This was harder than I thought it would be. Not because it was wrong, but because it went against every habit I had built over the years. For so long, I had been the quiet safety net, the backup plan, the one who noticed problems before they happened. I was the one who smoothed things over before anyone else even knew there was tension. Now, I was letting things fall where they might. I was allowing discomfort. I was allowing silence. On Friday evening, we went to a neighborhood barbecue hosted by the Wilsons, who lived 2 houses down. Usually, I would have brought a salad or a dessert, arrived early, helped arrange the chairs, maybe even wiped down the picnic tables. That was who I had been for years. This time, I showed up empty-handed and 10 minutes late. I wore a plain sweater instead of the bright, cheerful version of myself that everyone expected. Mark noticed right away. "You didn't make the pasta salad?" he said, a little too loud. "I didn't," I answered. He frowned, confused, like he had missed a step in a dance he knew by heart. "I thought you were going to." "I didn't say that." We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the smell of grilled burgers and the sound of old rock music playing through someone's Bluetooth speaker. One of the neighbors glanced in our direction, then quickly looked away. Dinner felt tense. Someone asked Mark what time we were eating, and he snapped that it would be ready when it was ready. I noticed a woman across the table raise her eyebrows at her husband. This was different. People could feel it. Later that night at home, Mark paced around the living room while I sat in bed reading. "Something is going on with you," he said at last. "You're acting like I did something terrible." I set my book down slowly. "Did you?" He let out a sharp laugh. "That photo again, Sarah? You're making a big deal out of nothing." I felt the familiar anger rise up, sharp and ready. I let it move through me without speaking. "It wasn't just the photo," I said calmly. "It was everything around it." He shook his head. "You're being dramatic." That word hit me differently now. It didn't sink into me the way it used to. "Good night, Mark," I said, turning off the lamp. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Laura. "I'm worried about him," she wrote. "He's not acting like himself." I looked at the text for a long time before replying with something I had never said before. "Neither am I." The real test came a week later when Mark told me about his retirement recognition dinner. "They're having it at the VFW hall," he said. "Saturday night. People from church and work will be there. I need you to come." The way he said the word need made something tighten inside my chest. "I'll think about it," I replied. He looked surprised. "Think about it?" "Yes." He stared at me, then gave a short, uneasy laugh. "You're coming." I met his eyes steadily. "We'll see." That night, Kayla sent another text. "Dad's been really stressed," she wrote. "Are you guys okay?" I sat on the edge of the bed with my phone in my hand, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. This was the part no one talked about. The doubt. The quiet damage. The worry about who else might get hurt. I typed carefully. "We're working through some things. None of this is your fault." She replied with a heart emoji. Then, after a short pause, another message appeared. "You didn't deserve that." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. By Friday afternoon, Mark was clearly on edge. He snapped at the dog for no reason. He forgot about a meeting and blamed someone else. He even accused me of hiding things from him. "I'm not hiding," I said evenly. "I'm just not fixing." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My determination wavered. What if this was cruel? What if I was hurting him more than necessary? What if I was wrong? Then I pictured myself stepping out of that photo again. The way I had smiled while making myself smaller. The way I had disappeared so easily. I decided to go to the dinner. Not for him. For me. The VFW hall smelled like coffee that had been sitting too long on a burner and strong floor cleaner that never quite covered the past. Folding chairs were arranged in straight rows. Name tags were stuck to jackets and blouses. People greeted each other with that mix of warmth and routine you often see at church gatherings and retirement events. It was Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Mark's big evening. Before we left, I stood in the bathroom at home and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I didn't dress up. No bright colors. No bold jewelry. Just a navy blouse, black slacks, and low heels. I wanted to look like myself, not like an accessory beside him. The drive there was quiet. Mark kept switching radio stations but never settled on one. His knee bounced nervously. I watched the familiar streets pass by and felt strangely calm. Like something inside me had already made its choice. Inside the hall, people noticed Mark right away. "There he is. Happy retirement. About time they honored you?" Hands clapped him on the back. He smiled, shook hands, and stepped easily into the role he knew so well. Respected, dependable. The man everyone believed they understood. Denise was there. I saw her immediately near the refreshment table, wearing a cream cardigan and talking with a woman from church. She looked comfortable, relaxed, like she belonged in the scene. Kayla stood next to her, looking down at her phone. When she noticed me, her face softened and she gave a small wave. Mark didn't see them at first. When he finally did, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Good," he murmured. "They made it." "They? Not you." We sat down, and the program began. There were speeches about dedication, about long years of service, about being a family man. Each phrase landed softly but heavily, like small stones dropped into still water. I felt the ripples inside me, even though I kept my face calm. Then it was time for photos. A woman from the church committee stood up and lifted her phone. "Let's get a family picture with Mark," she said brightly. Mark turned without thinking and reached for my hand. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and familiar, as if nothing had changed between us. For a brief second, the old habit flared up. Step in, smile, keep it easy, don't make trouble. Instead, I gently pulled my hand away. "Oh," I said, my voice calm and polite but clear enough for others to hear. "I shouldn't be in this one?" Mark blinked. "What?" I gave a small smile, the kind you use when you're trying not to cause a scene. "You told me last week that I'm not family for pictures, remember? I'll just go get more ice." The room went quiet. Not loudly. just strangely, like something had slipped out of place. A few people laughed softly at first, unsure. The laughter faded when no one else joined in. Denise looked down at her shoes. Kayla's head lifted quickly. "Dad?" she said. Mark's face turned red. He forced a laugh. "She's joking." I stayed still. Tom Reynolds, a longtime family friend Mark had known since high school, frowned slightly. Was she joking? "Mark? That was enough." Mark's smile weakened. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The phone slowly lowered. No one took the picture. I turned and walked toward the refreshment table. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might echo in the room. My hands trembled as I scooped ice into a plastic cup. I focused on the sound, the clatter and scrape. Anything to steady myself. Behind me, I heard quiet voices, low questions. A truth had finally been spoken out loud. Later, in the car, Mark lost his temper. "What was that?" he demanded. "You embarrassed me." I stared out the window as the parking lot lights passed by. "No," I said quietly. "I didn't." He kept talking angrily as we pulled into the driveway. I went inside, locked myself in the bathroom, and slid down to the floor when my legs gave out. I cried, not from regret, but from release. For the first time in years, the truth had stood openly in the room. After that night, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but also clearer, like a window that had finally been wiped clean. For several days, Mark and I moved around each other carefully. We spoke only when needed. He slept on the couch again. I didn't ask him to return to the bed. He tried anger first, then self-pity, then silence. On Tuesday evening, he stood in the kitchen watching me wash dishes. "You didn't have to do that," he said at last. I turned off the water and faced him. "I didn't have to step out of that photo either." He rubbed his face, looking older than I had ever seen him. "You made me look foolish." I shook my head gently. "You looked like yourself." Something shifted then. It didn't break. It moved. Over the next few weeks, the consequences settled in. Not dramatic, but real. Some people from church stopped calling me the way they once did. Others reached out quietly. Sharon brought me coffee one morning and said, "About time," with a small smile. Laura called once, sounding awkward, and admitted she hadn't understood how things appeared from the outside. "I didn't understand how they felt from the inside," I told her. Kayla came over one Saturday while Mark was out. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I had signed papers years ago without much thought. "I'm glad you spoke." "Up," she said softly, pulling at the edge of a napkin. I always felt like I had to pretend nothing was strange. I reached across and squeezed her hand. "You never have to pretend with me." That meant more than I expected. As for Mark, his realization came slowly. He asked, somewhat awkwardly, about counseling. We went to 2 sessions. We talked about boundaries, about respect, about what family truly means. I also opened a separate checking account in my own name. I updated beneficiaries. I removed my name from certain things and placed it firmly on others. Nothing dramatic, just clear decisions. One evening, weeks later, Mark asked if we could talk. "I don't want to lose you," he said. I believed that he meant it. But belief was no longer enough. "I don't want to lose myself," I replied. Whether our marriage would last was still uncertain. What was no longer uncertain was my place within it. One morning, I stood alone in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the window. A warm mug of coffee rested in my hands. I took a picture of myself, not for anyone else, not for social media, just for me. My face looked a little tired, a little older, but steady and sure. I printed the photo and placed it on the refrigerator with a magnet. In the picture of my life, I was no longer stepping out of the frame. If you have ever been asked, directly or quietly, to shrink yourself so someone else could feel bigger, I hope you remember this. Dignity does not come from being included by permission. It comes from standing exactly where you belong. If this story feels familiar to you, please know you are not alone, and you are never too old, too late, or too much to take your place back. Thank you for listening. Share this if it touched you. Stay if you need the reminder.
If you like our video, then subscribe our YouTube channel and hit the bell like button.